Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from the unapologetic perspective of the Hoosier Left. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. We spent the last several weeks speaking with prominent authors like David Pepper and Andrew Whitehead, candidates for federal office like Lori Camp and Derek Holder, and statewide nominee Terry Gooden. All of that in the shadow of perhaps the craziest month in American political history. And though it may be difficult to set all of that on the back burner, remember that state and local politics has a much more tangible impact on our day-to-day lives. So, let's take this week to jump back into an important statehouse race. My guest today is Fort Wayne's Kyle Thele, candidate for Indiana House District 83. Not to be confused with Silicon Valley venture capitalist and confessed fascist Peter Thiel, the owner and operator of Trump VP pick J.D. Vance. Seriously, that dude is scary and you should look him up. But if you turn 180 degrees from that guy, you'll find our guy Kyle. This biography from his campaign website, quote, born into a middle-class family, the son of two hard-working parents, his values were set at a young age. He learned quickly what it meant to work hard and also the undeniable importance of the surrounding community. His loving parents wouldn't have been able to provide the stable life he enjoyed without the help of neighbors and family who were able to provide affordable daycare options. Along with his younger brother and sister, they never needed to worry about who was going to be looking out for them. Knowing that kind of support was all around them made it that much easier to just be kids. A three-sport athlete in high school, Kyle continued playing baseball at Michigan State University at the club level. While at MSU, he studied journalism, wrote for the paper, and hosted a radio show. That launched a more than 10-year career as a journalist and member of the media in Chicago. He worked with some of the most reputable outlets in the media landscape, including the Chicago Sun-Times and Vox Media, where he is currently a member of the Vox Media Union and Writers Guild of America East. While living in Chicago, he was lucky enough to meet his now-wife Marita. After getting married in 2019, they moved to Fort Wayne in 2020 and quickly started laying roots in the community. They now have two young boys who are blessed to have a large extended family surrounding them. Kyle is running for state representative to make sure every resident in District 83 can have the same kind of support and love that he knows is so needed in a happy and healthy life. For too long, the elected officials in this state have made decisions based on whatever the national news focus is for the day, or enriching the political machine in Indianapolis. He's here to represent his constituents and do what is best for the people of Northeast Indiana. He's a Fort Wayne Democrat and won't be bullied by the wants of Indianapolis. End quote. In this interview, Thele and I talk a little bit about his background before jumping into the major issues in this campaign as he sees them: childcare, healthcare, education, organized labor, personal freedom, small business, environmental protection, and government transparency. Before we turn to that conversation, please consider supporting Who's Left financially. I currently work as an independent craftsman during the day and work on this project whenever I can. There are so many more things I want to do here at Who's Left. More campaign finance research, which I've fallen behind on, admittedly. Maybe live hangouts, daily episode if we can get there, but I need your help. If you can, visit scottaaronrogers.substack.com and subscribe at the paid level. For $5 a month or $50 a year, you can help me push our state in a better direction. And maybe, if we reach critical mass, I can put down my tool belt and devote my full time to you, to this project, and to Indiana's future. So, if you have the means, pause right now, go to scottaaronrogers.substack.com and subscribe at the paid level. And while the best way to help this project is a financial contribution, if you can't afford it at this time, you can still help. Subscribe at the free level. over on Substack. Set your favorite podcast player to auto-download new episodes of the show. Rate and review the show on whatever platform you use. Train the algorithm to help new people find us. Follow me on social media at facebook.com/who's left. That's HOOS left. I'm also on Blue Sky at the same handle. On Instagram, Threads, and Twitter, I'm at ScottRodge78. That's SCOTTROG78. And on Mastodon at ScottRodge78 at Hoosier.social. Full video episodes of the pod are available on YouTube, and clips are over on TikTok. The handle on both of those is at Who's Left. Please subscribe on whichever platforms you use and send me a DM to discuss ideas for the project. But most importantly, share our message. Forward the articles to friends, family, and colleagues. Don't just like, but share on social media. Invite others to this community of Indiana leftists. I might be the guy with the microphone, but I try to take this thing where your input leads me. So, please be generous with feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. I value it all. To those who have joined this community already, especially those paid subscribers, thank you so much. I am honored by your support. And to everybody, thanks for listening. Now, here's my interview with Kyle Thele. Kyle Thele, welcome to the Who's Left podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So let's begin by having you introduce yourself to our listeners and our viewers on YouTube there today.
Sure. My name's Kyle Thele. I'm running for House District 83 here in Indiana. That's the southwest portion of Allen County, southwest Fort Wayne, into Whitley County and Columbia City. I have a small growing family, 2 young kids. So it's been really important to me to kind of do my best and show our best for our kids. And I think that there's so much more that we can be doing. So it's really been a force for me.
All right, awesome. Where'd you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'm a Hoosier by choice. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, lived in the city for about 10 years after going to Michigan State, then moved to Fort Wayne with my wife. She's from here. We knew that this was kind of the perfect area to grow our family. It was somewhere where we could, at the time, reasonably afford a house and kind of really get into the community. It had great school system, everything we were looking for. So it very quickly became home for us. We've lived here for 4 years now. We moved at right at the height of the first wave of the pandemic, and have quickly settled in.
Times, yeah. So, what do you do up there in Fort Wayne?
Yeah, I have the luxury of having a job that's conducive to running a campaign like this, and also not more than a little bit fun. I'm a sports writer for SB Nation and Vox Media.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, it's a good time. I get paid to watch sports, so I really can't complain.
What's your beat?
National, and it kind of I work with all of our sites, so it's whatever is popping most nationally. Every week it's a little bit of baseball, a little bit of football, basketball. Every once in a while we'll dabble with soccer and hockey and all the fun stuff.
Okay, so not necessarily like Indiana centric on your work.
No. Although we do cover a lot of Indiana stuff, especially with Caitlin Clark having as much fun as she is.
Oh yeah, I remember the first couple games of the season year there. They weren't doing so hot. And, there's adjustment period, but they've been on a roll.
Yeah, I saw a stat today that she has reached the 400 400 points and 200 assists faster than LeBron James did as his rookie year. So that's saying something.
Wow, that's neat. Yeah, it's boy, Indiana's just a great place for sports. That's we could have a whole other conversation. But let's back to politics here. Let's talk about your sort of political awakening. Were you always interested in politics, or did it sort of come on later? where do you get your political values from?
So politics has always been part of my life, although usually for a long time it was a secondary part. It was always something that I was aware of and kind of actively paying attention to, but not something that I was participating in. Uh, as a journalist, and I worked a bunch of different beats, growing, getting into the business. Uh, I became especially aware of politics and how every little thing mattered in 2016 when Trump was initially elected.
Hmm.
And at that point, it became evident that I couldn't just watch. And whether it was at the time my professional career as a writer or just as an activist doing whatever I could, I needed to be more involved. I was still living in Chicago at the time, so it was a little bit more, I was a little bit more surrounded by blue. Everyone was a little bit more of the same opinion. I had kind of a second awakening when we moved to Fort Wayne, and it became that much more clear that there's a lot of work that can be done. Not that anything is really that different just by crossing the border from Illinois to Indiana. It's just perspectives change, and there's better messaging that can happen. And I got to work quick, just working on some campaigns, working in communications. I worked on Destiny Wells' Secretary of State campaign. That was an amazing experience. Still a little heartbroken that she lost, but now she's going to win AG. So
She's absolutely going to win AG this year.
All for the greater good. I worked on Stephanie Crandall's campaign here for Fort Wayne City Council, and she's one of the smartest women I have ever met. She knows politics like no one I've ever met. She knows Fort Wayne like no one I've ever met. You just mention, there's an intersection that's annoying, and she's like, well, here's why.
Yeah.
So I've been blessed to work on those campaigns, and I try and take as much as I can from them and the growing Democratic community here in Fort Wayne.
So, what pushed you to jump in yourself this time?
This year, it just ended, but I was a member of this past cycle of emerging leaders. For those who don't know, it's a group that meets 4 times a year, and they take people from all over the state and kind of coach them up on how to run a campaign, how to be involved in a campaign, not just as a candidate, but as anyone who wants to be a part of the system. It was during one of those meetings, and it was just after the 23 cycle where I worked for Stephanie Crandall, and she came off a tough loss, and I was feeling it a little bit. It hurt. She should have won. And the Allen County Democratic chair was there, and I couldn't hold my tongue. I let my complaints air a little bit. Why does this keep happening? How do we keep going through the same motions and expecting something different? And in a very polite, very productive way, he basically said, if you think you can do better, what's stopping you? So we found this race. This was the right race because for a number of reasons, it hadn't been challenged in so long. It was something that really needed someone who was going to come in and dig in on the grassroots, really just start the process. And that was something that I knew I could do. So I was eager to get started. This was never anything I expected. Even as I was getting more into politics, I always expected to be on the communications side, someone who was crafting the message, someone who was helping the politician deliver the message, not the person standing in the foreground or in the forefront. So this has all been new for me, but it's all been really exciting, and it's a process that I've loved the whole way through.
Well, I'll tell you what, win or lose, however you do, and it's going to be a win this November, but however you do, I just want to thank you for jumping in and putting your name in there and putting yourself on the line like that, especially in one of these districts where they're often uncontested, and just having somebody on the ballot is a big deal, because so many people just are discouraged, don't see themselves represented when they go to vote, and they don't even vote because they don't have anybody to vote for, and that's super important. So I know you talked about 83 up there in, you're in Allen and Whitley counties, and you knowing a little bit about gerrymandering. You could see what they've done, where they carve part of Fort Wayne out and to dilute that vote and pack it in with some more rural areas. So what's the dynamic up there?
So here's the funny part. They did gerrymander this district, but because it hadn't been tested in so long, they took it for granted. So they actually made it more Democrat friendly. They took out a chunk of the rural district to help out another Republican who was very clearly going to lose his seat if they didn't change things around. So this seat is ready for the taking. Someone just needs to actually do it. Like you said, someone needs to be on the ballot, because everyone always says to me, "Oh, it's a red district. What do how are you going to overcome those odds?" It's everyone there votes Republican. Well, everyone here votes Republican because that's the only option. There's no other option. So until we know, we don't know. I was really excited about this because it is, and the polls are showing this, this is a community that is, from a population standpoint, it's the heartbeat of suburbia. It's very similar to what you're seeing in like Hamilton County, a lot of suburban counties where people are willing to vote Democrat. They're eager to vote for the person who they think will do the best job, Democrat, Independent, Republican, whatever. They just need to be provided an option. And for too long, there just hasn't been an option.
And Republicans have gotten so extreme that they've gotten way out of that mainstream suburban vote. That was their base for the longest time.
And the current incumbent actually won the seat by running to the right of the former representative. He got even more extreme. And over the 10 years that he's been in office, because he hasn't had a Democratic challenger, he's gone farther and farther to the right. Now it's a representative that if you were to tell even someone who considers themselves a Republican what he's doing and what he's voting for, they'd be floored. And they are when I talk to them. They'll tell me, "Oh, I'm a Republican. I want to vote Republican." And I'll tell you, "Okay, I get it. I understand. But let me tell you what he's doing," or in a lot of cases, not doing. And all of a sudden I have their ear, and they're a little bit more interested.
So many Republicans, the majority anymore. We're recording this the week of the Republican National Convention, the night of Trump's speech. It's been a whole MAGA convention. There are no conservatives left there. Like they booed Mitch McConnell out of the place when they saw him the other day. Mitt Romney's not invited. Mike Pence isn't invited. Say what you will about conservatives and the conservative spectrum. It's a wide spectrum. I get it. And a lot of people in the suburbs maybe consider themselves conservative. And you're knocking on doors and you got a D next to your name. And maybe they're apprehensive at first, they consider themselves conservative. Well, Republicans aren't conservative anymore. They don't want to conserve anything. So I can work in good faith, and I'm to the left, but I can work with a conservative in good faith. I can't work with MAGA because they don't operate in good faith. Right. They are not conserving anything. They want to destroy.
And what I hear time and again is, "Oh, I'm a fiscal conservative." They're not trying to get into the culture wars. They're not trying to get into people's personal lives. It's how you handle the money of the state, which is great. Let me tell you about how we're mishandling the money of the state. Let me tell you about what they're doing to school districts and how they're just robbing public schools blind. Your tax dollars are being taken and being increased now across the state with property taxes. Let me tell you exactly why that's happening and the bad bills that the supermajority has passed that have made this happen. Once again, it's one of those weird things where over time the GOP has twisted itself into such a pretzel that they're standing for things that are the polar opposite of what they supposedly stood for 20, 30 years ago.
So I guess let's dive in to the issues a little bit. As you're out there talking to constituents, talking to the voters, I'm sure they're telling you about their concerns. So what are they talking about?
The number one thing I hear about is schools. We are lucky enough to live in a really good school district, really across the district. There's just great schools out here. And yet, those schools are losing money. And they're losing money to charter schools and private schools with no strings attached, absolutely no control over what happens, and it's making the schools worse. And then when they come in, the GOP comes in to explain why, they say, oh, we didn't mean for that to happen. We didn't mean for your schools to get hurt. Well, you're telling on yourself. It is a problem that is only going to get worse if we don't address it, if we don't stop the just blank checks and slush funds that's being created to help these charter schools that could disappear tomorrow. And in a lot of cases, they kind of do. And all of a sudden, everyone is worse off, from the taxpayers to the students who really were just trying to get a good education by going to these schools, and the communities that now have a black eye. That's the number one issue, I think. I hear from so many people. Recently, I've heard a lot of people just not feeling great about why their taxes are going up and why their property tax is skyrocketing. Mm-hmm. And it's complicated in a sense because it took about 30 years for it to get to where it is, but it's kind of straightforward in another way. We wrote some really bad laws with the supermajority, created some really complicated, unnecessary formulas that became manipulated through the pandemic when prices plummeted and then interest rates plummeted, and now they're shooting back up. And now you're leaving homeowners in a spot where their property tax is worth so much more than what they could have afforded when they bought the house. They wouldn't have bought certain houses if they knew that the property taxes would end up looking like this 3-4 years later. And there's a way we can address that. That's all done through the legislature. That's something that at any point in time, we can rework how that is calculated. The other thing that I'm hearing a whole lot about, and this is something that is really personal to me, childcare. It is so expensive to raise a child just in general. And that's not even getting too far into childbirth and the first year, how expensive it is, going in and back and forth to doctor's visits and hospitals and all things. Even for a happy, healthy child, you're after a lot, and that's really expensive. But childcare in Indiana is one of the worst in the country. And it is so expensive, you end up spending more than some college tuitions in a year. And on top of that, if you want to get your child in just a normal daycare, we're not talking, upper echelon elite here, you end up needing, if you're looking to get an infant in childcare, you end up needing to get on a wait list that you're paying for sometimes before the child is conceived, which it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. And there's ways you can control this. There's ways that you can invest in more childcare options. Businesses want to. There's a lot of money that's being, in certain communities, that's being moved around where you can get a tri-pay method. You can get all these different ways if you actually address the problem. We're turning a blind eye to it.
You've mentioned a couple things, childcare and education, that me, as a leftist, I'm like, I don't think the private sector should have any function in those whatsoever. Or maybe, okay, private schools, whatever. Hey, if you want to do them, it's fine. If you got a clientele that wants to attend that out of their pocket, fine, whatever. But human services, childcare, health, education, and healthcare too, for that matter. Capitalism is not good at taking care of those things. It's great for certain things. Capitalism is friggin' awesome to put a newer, faster, smaller computer in your pocket every year. It's not good for taking care of people.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, in Kyle Thele's, ideal world, say the super majority's not there. Let's close our eyes and, pretend that we could make Indiana in our vision. What would you do? What would your ideal child care and education systems look like?
If in an absolute ideal world where money is not an issue, yes, the state could be funding a lot of this stuff. Realistically, what I would love to see is we get investment from businesses, we get investment from some of the biggest corporations in the state, and say, listen, you want a workforce that is dedicated, you want a workforce that wants to pay attention and focus on their job every day, have a workforce that knows that their kids are taken care of and their kids are safe. So invest a little bit extra money in that childcare. You can have a system where, yes, the government is paying for a chunk of it, but you have money coming in from the private sector paying for it, not just taking money. It is good for business when you have moms and dads who don't have to worry if their kid is going to be okay on any given day. If they know that they're sending them to a safe place, it is good for business when they can focus in and just do their job. So why are we fighting this? Again, this is not an issue where it's like, well, the left feels like this and the right feels like this. Everyone kind of feels the same about this issue. We're just not doing anything. We're not trying. So it is a hard thing to do from an infrastructure standpoint. It is not a hard thing to do from a let's get on board and start working. We just need to start.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the difficulty in those things is people, is getting people. We need more teachers. We need more, early child care providers. Typically, and I'm not saying always, and I'm not gendering the job itself. So typically, those have been women's jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Indiana Republicans, you're driving women out of the state, and the people that love them, the people who value them as people. So you're driving away your teachers, you're driving away your healthcare workers, you're driving away your child care providers. It's a negative feedback loop, right?
Yeah, and on top of that, you're closing down so many places because it's all about the bottom line profitability. You're forcing these places to close, so now they're out of a job. They are not feeling welcome in anything, in any way, shape, or form. So why would you stay in Indiana? This is a great state, and I think everyone who lives here, we're choosing to live here for the most part. We need to make it as good as it can be. And when we're actively punishing women just for existing and making it harder for them to work, harder for them to live, harder for them to just be, we are worse off for it as an entire state.
It's one of the issues on your plank on your website there, and you frame it as freedom, right? When we're talking about women's issues and bodily autonomy and their the right over their reproductive care, and I like the way you frame it as a freedom issue, because that also includes like our LGBTQ friends, especially the trans issue they've made such a big deal out of.
Yeah. The Indiana I knew was one that was easier to live in. The state was not going to overtax you. It was not going to overburden you with all of these extra pressures. It was just an easier state to live in than, say, Illinois, where taxes are just a lot higher. Something happened where the taxes stayed about the same for a while. They're going up now, but they stayed about the same for a while. But they decided that we're going to get super invested in how you live your life and all of these just social issues that should not be any business of the government's. How someone decides to live their life, as long as they're abiding the law, is no business of the government. Who they decide to love, how they decide to start a family, is no business of the government's. And when the government comes in and starts taking those freedoms away, everyone needs to pay attention, because that is a slippery, slippery slope, and they won't stop until it's just the few white landowning men all of a sudden that have control over just about every aspect of the state.
Yeah, they're literally trying to rewind time, and they're making progress. And God forbid Trump gets reelected and gets to put Project 2025 into place. They will rewind the clock on us straight back to feudalism.
Yeah, and it's not just, I say, because it is also these things, but it's not just about misogyny and bigotry and racism. There is a huge and growing gap between the haves and the have-nots that has nothing to do with race or gender or anything else. And the people at the very top don't really care how you're living in your life. They just use it as a tool to kind of keep you in place. And everyone is going to feel the effects of having a super small minority of people that control every aspect of life in Indiana.
Yeah, they keep us have-nots fighting with each other, so we don't come after the stuff that the haves have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly. And boy, they were always went on and on about small government, right? Like now they want the government so big it fits in your bedroom.
Yeah, it fits in your bedroom, fits in your wallet, fits just about everywhere they want to be.
Well, okay. So now, you also talk about on your website, unions was
Mm-hmm.
right up there toward the top, and we're kind of in the midst of a new organized labor movement. You getting a lot of support from the union folks up in your area?
Yeah, I'm a union member myself. I'm a member of the WGA East. I have a job because of a union. I'm able to run for office because of a union that protected my position through the pandemic, that has fought for salary increases, at cost of living, and raises along the way. What a union can do, from everyone from the individual to the family to the community, cannot be understated. And when a union is at its best, it is serving so many people and really lifting the tide for an entire region. I think it's so important that when we talk about unions, we talk about working families. We talk about what it means for the employee to have that freedom to know, listen, if something happens, my union has fought hard that I can take a day off to go make sure that my son or daughter is healthy, that I can take them into a hospital. I can miss a day work without being at risk of losing my job. On top of that, it's so important, especially as we see costs for everything going up, that we have unions in place that are saying, no. If you're making more money as a company, that needs to be distributed to the people who are actually doing the work. Unions are such a crucial and becoming ever more apparent aspect of life. And I think that what's really encouraged me as both a union member and someone who just appreciates the labor movement, the younger generation has really gotten invested in unions. I think there's something to be said for the group mentality that so much of this generation coming up has, that they realize what's best for one can be best for all. If we work together, we are a greater force, and we don't need to put up with just crappy things because the boss says so, when we know that the person working right next to me isn't putting up with that. So if we team up, we can get a better outcome for everybody.
It's what the right had done such a good job for so long of demonizing unions. They're not necessary, or you see a guy taking a break on their job, God forbid, and oh, union, all right. So they've done such a good job demonizing them. They whittled the union, the percentage of union workers in the workforce down to barely anything. And so as you see this new generation discovering organized labor again, it's like there's a joy in it. It's like, oh yes, solidarity. Why didn't we think of this before?
And you're seeing it across so many sectors of work. It's not just the blue collar jobs where you're working in a factory. You're seeing it in Starbucks. You're seeing it in retail across the board. You're seeing it in white collar jobs. There is no industry that isn't benefited by having a union, having some sort of labor organization in place.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, they're better for the businesses in the long run too. They might not be better in the short term. It might not be best for profits this quarter, but if you want to build a strong business with a healthy culture, you look at the way they do it in Germany. Like the unions are considered almost a full partner in governing the business, and that's the way it should be.
And what I think a lot of people don't understand, and what I think has been really hidden from a lot of people, is even if you're not in a union, and joining a union is your choice, you can or you don't have to. Even if you're not in a union, your job benefits from having organized labor around it. Because when that labor union goes in and fights for their contracts, fights for increased wages go up across the company. The company's not going to go in and start demonizing people who aren't in unions, because that's the opposite of what they're trying to do anyways. So when unions win, everyone in a company wins.
Some of the people that are most apprehensive about all this union talk are small business people. And a lot of times that doesn't even really apply to what they're doing. But they have concerns, and I'm sure you're talking to small business people in your community. Just in general, what are the concerns of the business community that you hear about and that you want to take to Indianapolis with you?
Well, I really think that unions and small businesses, family-owned businesses, Main Street businesses, they kind of go hand in hand, even if it's not evident, because what you're really looking for is a community effect. When you have a strong union, you have a strong working community. When you're a mom and pop shop that's selling ice cream, you want to be part of the community. So I think what's most important when I'm talking to small businesses is saying, I'm not here to try and overtax you or to force you into hiring union-only employees if that's not something that fits with your corporation. What I'm trying to do is let's figure out a way to make you more a part of the community, make your business feel a little bit safer, a little bit more protected from the whims of the economy. Because when you feel more protected, you're more inclined to take care of your employees and make them feel more protected. And it becomes more of a community even within the industry. So I think that it's kind of that coming together and working together aspect that obviously is such a big part of unions, but is also a huge, huge part of small businesses. Because if you don't have small businesses, everyone does everything. So you kind of need to be a community, and they fail when they don't have protection from a bad week, a bad quarter. So that's how I kind of bring both sides together.
Yeah, well, like you were saying, when you got a good percentage of unions in your community, it raises the prevailing wage everywhere, and you as a small business owner, or maybe it's just you, or you're just you and your family running the business, right?
Mhm.
You want the rest of your community to have more expendable income, right? So they can buy your stuff.
And days off and time to go visit your stores and all of the things that we only have because unions fought for over the years.
Exactly, exactly. Um, Talk about the environment a little bit. That's another one of the big points you wanted to address there.
Yeah, I think that the word environmentalist has been grouped with kind of this 1970s extreme hippy dippy, tree hugger, whatever. It's become a negative for some reason. Some of the most conservative, quote unquote, people are environmentalists. They just don't really realize it. The people who love the rural parts of Indiana, the people who love to go out and spend a weekend hunting or fishing, they're doing that here in Indiana because Indiana's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I haven't met a single Hoosier that won't stop if given the opportunity and say, all right, we're going to watch the sunset. Let's watch the sun go down because it's just gorgeous. It's the middle of summer right now. Lakes are full every night of people just parking their boat or walking outside, and we're going to watch the sunset over the lake. That is being an environmentalist. So let's take care of this beautiful piece of land that we all call home. Let's do our best to make sure that these big companies who don't live here aren't, throwing trash in our backyard. This is not something, this isn't your parents or grandparents' counterculture. This is saying we are taking pride in our state, we're taking pride in our community, and we want it to be as beautiful as it can be.
So you're not going to forcibly knock down people's doors and make them eat tofu, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried going door to door and just ripping out every gas stove I could, but I wasn't finding much success.
The last, I guess, policy issue I want to address with you is government transparency. One of the big things that I've sort of looked at is the IEDC, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and they are sort of a quasi-governmental agency, and it just looks like a big, sloppy kiss between Republicans and their donors and public money. So that when I think bad government transparency in Indianapolis, that's what I'm thinking about. What are you thinking about?
So for me, and I agree with everything you said, but for me, you have to get started with small steps. And the political and campaign money in Indiana right now is such a huge mess that this is not something that we can just wave a magic wand at. You have to start local. You have to start with what you can control. What I can control is, regardless of what would come across my desk in Indianapolis as a representative, if I vote one way or another on it, my constituents can contact me. I have an email that I respond to. I have a phone number that I respond to personally. This is not, a big voicemail box that so many of these current representatives have that you're talking into the ether. I take pride in the fact that if I feel some way about something, I'll explain it. I'll tell you my side. We might not agree. We might not even if we have the conversation, we might not come to an agreement at the end of the conversation, but I will always tell you where I'm coming from and why I'm coming from that position. The answer should never, ever, ever be because someone gave me a whole lot of money to say that.
Yeah.
The answer should always be, I feel this because of this. Maybe it's my journalism background, but I feel really strongly that if you take an opinion on something, especially if you're signing or writing a bill, you should have hard reasons that you can stand in front of the group and say, this is why I feel that way, even if they disagree. And I think that that's what gets lost so much in this current political climate where everyone is at each other's throats, because you're either not getting answers or the answers are such clear, they're bullshit, that I don't know that anyone can take it seriously. I have no problem defending myself against someone who feels differently from me. We'll keep it civil. We'll keep it respectful. I will tell you my side, and maybe, who knows, maybe one of us will convince the other. It happens from time to time. But government transparency to me is, if I'm going to do something, I have real reasons and I can tell you why.
Yeah. Is your Republican representative up there, Chris Judy, coming back into the community, holding town halls, talking to his constituents? Is he accessible? Is he transparent?
So there's a few stories that come to mind. The first of which, totally coincidentally, did not know this ahead of time. He lives literally around the corner from my in-laws. My in-laws are not exactly hermits. They are out and about. They know all of their neighbors, apparently, except for Chris Judy, who lived right there the whole time. And he's not, like, even his neighbors don't seem to know too much about him. When he does do town halls or visit anywhere, it's very controlled. He loves to kind of play surprised when someone asks him a question, like, "Oh, I didn't know that was happening like that," which means one of two things: either he's outright lying, or he's really bad at the job and he doesn't actually realize that these things are in these bills, which is just as bad. There is no real representation going on right now.
Yeah.
He's not in the community explaining himself, but just as bad, he's also not really voting on too many things. This past session, he missed more bills, than he actually voted. And he is a member of the supermajority. There is nothing easier right now than just blank check yeses on these bills. No one would call him on it in these sessions. No one would think twice about him just being another Republican who is voting yes. He's not even showing up to do that.
Well, on one hand, he doesn't have to put his name on that garbage that they're putting out. So I guess for him there.
The problem is the garbage he jumps at. The garbage he ends up helping to write. He has no problem getting on board with the far right stuff. It's the day-to-day business of the government that he doesn't have time for.
Oh, the boring stuff that actually affects people's day-to-day lives.
Exactly.
Stuff that's not culture war trash. Yeah.
He loves writing bills that tries to eliminate trans people entirely. He has less time to, pay attention to what's in an education bill.
Do you have any greatest Chris Judy hits you want to point out, like worst bills maybe that you know of?
Well, the absolute worst one, there are a few. The absolute worst one was in the previous fall session. He wrote the anti-trans bill that tried to pigeonhole everyone in a system that already kind of makes you pick a gender one way or the other. He tried to make it even more and more specific and really eliminate the entire trans community. And it was a bill that was so extreme that it didn't even make it through in this supermajority Republican government. I don't know how wild you have to be to get a bill shot down for being too extreme, but he found it. He figured out the way. The other thing, he has found ways, and I'm not going to I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this one, but he has found ways, if you look up his voting record, for killing bills that he wants to make it look like he supports. Bills that are good. In this last session, he came through and poison pilled it. It was a bill that would have done a lot of good for a lot of people. And in a non-budget session, he came through and tried to add money to it, which again, we're now talking about someone who either knows better, should know better, and is actively doing something to harm people, or he doesn't know for whatever reason, despite being in the office for 10 years and just doesn't know the job. Either way, it's really bad, and it's making lives harder.
Sounds like a real champ. Well, Kyle, so give us your big closing pitch here. Tell us all about where the people can find you, how they can help you, and just take us home.
Yeah. First off, Kyle4staterep.com, KYLEFOR staterep.com. It's where you can find me. My email is kyle@kyle4staterep.com. So easy enough. And like I said before, I answer my emails. I'm here to talk to people. I'm here to have the conversations. The biggest thing with my campaign and just me as a person is I am here for the conversation. I am here to talk with someone, find out what's going on in their lives, find out what we can do to make it better. For too long, people have been talked to like they're idiots. People have been told how to feel, what to think, what to do. Hoosiers know what's best for them. Hoosiers know what would make their Tuesday better. I want to make your Tuesday better. So tell me what we can do in government to make things just a little bit easier on your day-to-day. We can try. I'm not going to promise the world. I'm not going to sit here and say, vote me into office and I'll cure the world's ills. But I can guarantee I'll try. And if for whatever reason you disagree with what I'm doing, again, reach out. I'm here to talk. I will always have an open door and an open ear to anyone who wants to have a conversation.
That right there is how representative government is supposed to work. Kyle Thele, thank you so much for joining the Who's Left podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. This has been really great.
Okay. Once again, that was Kyle Thele, Democratic candidate for Indiana State House of Representatives, District 83, which includes parts of Allen and Whitley counties in the northeastern part of the state. It was great to talk to Kyle about his forward-looking, positive vision for our state. It would be a nice change of pace for the 83rd District to have a representative like him that actually values his constituents, and I appreciate that he kept our discussion optimistic and aspirational. When they go low, we go high, right? Good stuff. Probably the healthy way to go about things, and probably in line with Kyle's personality. But my motto is, when they go low, step on them. And Thele's opponent, 5-term incumbent Christopher Judy, is about as low as they get. For example, Judy got his career in the state legislature off to a roaring start by signing on to Mike Pence's abhorrent LGBTQ discrimination in disguise Religious Freedom Restoration Act in his first session. His disdain for our queer friends hasn't abated. He voted for Indiana's version of Florida's Don't Say Gay law, and also voted for a bill banning trans girls from school sports. He has consistently supported bills making it harder for Hoosiers to vote. He praised Governor Holcomb for sending 50 Indiana National Guard members to Texas in an anti-immigrant photo op stunt. He voted to attack diversity, equity, inclusion, tenure, and academic rigor itself at Indiana's state colleges and universities. He's continually attacked public schools in a variety of ways, voting no on raises for teachers, joining in on the critical race theory panic, and voting to force public schools to share their funding with charter schools, among other shitty decisions. Dude hasn't seen a pro-gun bill he won't jump on. Co-sponsoring a bill authorizing teachers to carry firearms in the classroom, voting to allow gun owners to go without a permit, voting no on a bill banning machine gun conversion devices, and voting to expand stand your ground laws. In fact, it appears this jackass thinks guns should have more rights in this state than women do, and he's going about ensuring it, sponsoring multiple bills making abortion access increasingly difficult before finally voting for Indiana's heinous, draconian, complete abortion ban in 2022. Chris Judy sucks. His politics suck. His voting record sucks. That smug grin on his face sucks. He sucks out loud. He sucks in Technicolor. He sucks in a house. He sucks with a mouse. He sucks on a train. He sucks in the rain. He sucks on a boat. He sucks with a goat. Chris Judy sucks so thoroughly he should be commended for the sheer depth of his suckitude. But at least he's consistent. And because Chris Judy sucks so consistently, District 83, if you want better from your elected officials, don't expect it from him. He's not going to change. And this clown ran unopposed in 2016, 18, and 22. Kyle Thele has seen enough. Thank him for stepping up to the bully and help elect him this November 5th. Thank you for listening. And thanks again to Kyle Thele, Democrat for Indiana State Representative. His website is kyleforstaterep.com. Pay him a visit there. Donate if you can. Get involved in the campaign. And if you're feeling extra generous after you've contributed to Kyle's campaign, head on over to scottaaronrogers.substack.com and help me expand our pro-democracy footprint with a paid subscription. That's where you'll find everything I publish, but you can also find me on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at Who's Left, and on most other social media sites at ScottRodge78. Please give me feedback, tips, ideas, concerns. My DMs are open, or email me at scottrogers78@gmail.com. Forward the show to a friend, and have them forward it to another friend. Let's keep this project going. Until next time, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.